I'll just introduce us and then turn it over a little bit to Jovan. And I know I've met most or all of you at some point, but I'm Annie Levinsky. I'm the Executive Director of Historic Denver. And part of how this application came about sort of re-inspired because we were out doing the Discover Denver survey work, and the survey teams came across the property. But of course, Jovan and her family had been interested in pursuing this before that as well. But we finally got connected and had some interns work on it, and it took a bit of time, but we're really happy to bring the application close to the finish line here as one of the first properties to be designated after that survey, and certainly one of the oldest in Congress Park. So, I'll turn it over to Jovan to maybe tell you all a little bit more about, how they came to own it and why they were interested in doing this.
Okay. All right. Well, I think because of living in Germany for 3 years while my husband was in the service, when we returned to Colorado, I just had this idea. I wanted to live in a neighborhood with character and an old house. So we bought one in Capitol Hill, and that was 1970. And so then, we worked on it. It worked out well. But about 10 years later, I was working then downtown and living in Hilltop and regularly driving through Congress Park, and love Congress Park, always have. Anyway, there was a sign that said, "Incredible Queen Anne fixer-upper," and I just couldn't resist. So I pulled in and looked at it. And I mean, just once I saw it, it's right off the beaten path, off of 13th, but I fell in love immediately. So I kind of convinced my husband that we should really investigate it. It did have a lot of problems. There was a list of about 13 code violations from the health department that had to be corrected within 30 days. But the realtors listed it, they cleared it out. Mrs. Howe had lost her sight, and I don't know exactly the age she was at the time, but I don't know how she even managed in a house that size. But I could tell we had an inspection, and that didn't give us a lot of reassurance about the things that would be required to rehabilitate it. But it just had to be preserved. It was sort of like a survivor. On the one side was a 1962, so I think it's a 16-unit building, and right across the street was a 24-unit, also built in 1962. The nice thing, right on 13th on the corner, was this really nice 1914 all brick 6-unit, very nice building. You all drive by it regularly, I'm sure. So anyway, I just think that house deserved some love and care. So we bought it. They could not find, there's no financing because it was actually kind of no furnace, no water. The roof, the foundation was going. So the owner carried the note, Mrs. Howe did, and we started to work on it, but it was a bigger job than we thought. So anyway, worked mostly, weekends for a while, but I could not get any construction loan or help. So fortunately, we struggled along with it for 2 years and would work when we could, steaming wallpaper, the things that unskilled people like owners can do. And then at the end of that period, I actually was with an oil company that was sold. And so suddenly I had time on my hands and a severance package. So I spent that money on Columbine Street. And we really got to work then, had an excellent contractor. And I first, the thought was what to do with it, considering the surrounding properties. I thought, if I attempted to restore it to its original grandeur, who would buy a house in a neighborhood with such a mixed use around it, in still a changing neighborhood? So I decided that 2 units would be ideal because I could retain as many of the interior architectural features as possible by doing it that way. There was a nice bearing wall going from east to west down the center, and it was just worked perfectly we kept the common area, the foyer, and the beautiful staircase to enter both units, and one is on the north and one is on the south. The surprising thing about the property when we got it was the entire third floor was just open attic. So that was a bonus of completely unused space, which then became part of one of the units. So we had to add a staircase on one side. And anyway, we thought our theory, the fixer-upper, incredible fixer-upper, that we would be able to sell the two units. They were completely divided into separate meters and separate heating, electrical, and everything. We would be able to sell the two units, pay back Mrs. Howe, the owner carried note, and we would have maybe made maybe 10,000 for the 4 years that we'd kept it. Anyway, we had it listed, no buyers. So we rented it, and as it turned out, it has been a property that I have enjoyed. We've had good tenants, long-term tenants. We love the neighborhood. Every time I go over, if I do go over between tenants, I always just enjoy being in the place. It just kind of talks to me. And I wish you could all see the inside of it at some point, because Mr. Stahl, the original, he took such great care in selecting the hardware, the brass doorknobs, and every room is a little bit unique. It has two beautiful pocket doors with gorgeous hardware. Anyway, it's just a prize, and I love it, and I'm just so excited that Historic Denver would help us get this done. And I fiddled around a little bit doing research, but it takes professionals to really do it. The research, they have, Historic Denver, the interns have access to things that I could never find. I was amazed when they found all the history that they did on the Stahl family. All I knew for sure was the obituaries that I had originally found, and that all of the children went to East High School, and what Mr. Stahl's career was, that he decided to start a brand new business, totally new to the Denver area, typewriters, which helped to establish the newspapers in early Denver, the turn of the century. Any questions about it?
Is it still just 2 units?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Well, and in this day and age where people are actually asking to have more units in a building, this is really perfect.
Well, I think it just helped, to be able to keep all of the original doors, all of the original windows. We kind of had to combine. There was a butler's pantry, which is not real practical nowadays. So it kind of, the kitchens are small, but the butler's pantry kind of got combined to make a little dining area. So anyway, it was fun to plan it. And I hope that sometime I will contact, when it's between tenants, I will contact you all and you can come and see it, because I'd love
Oh, that
for
would be great. That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, and I just pulled up the designation application because there are some pictures embedded. So you see this example of the beautiful railing up the front stairs. It's a William Lang design. So while we certainly would have helped anyway, of course, we at Historic Denver have a little soft spot for Mr. Lang because he did our own Molly Brown house, and you can see some of these same attributes at the Stahl house. This, like I said, this is the application. The house meets the 3 criteria. It meets the criteria of being the work of a master because of William Lang, that it is a great example of a Queen Anne style home, although it also has these Richardsonian Romanesque attributes. And I was flipping through, I can't quite put my finger on the page, but if any of you have this really old book, Historic Denver, the Architects and Architecture, the Stahl house front window is in this book as an example of a Richardsonian window.
Oh,
And this book was published in, I think, 1973. So it's been recognized for a fairly long time. And then, of course, the third criteria it meets is association with people who had influence on society because of the Stahl house, the Stahl family. And here we have some pictures of them. John S. Stahl, sort of the patriarch, if you will, arrived in Colorado in 1880. And he started a hardware business with a couple of partners up in places like Tin Cup, Colorado.
Yes.
And sort of, and got his fortune started there, but then moved down to Denver and started a typewriter business and became sort of the main purveyor of typewriters in Denver, supplied all the newspapers with their typewriters. And so there are hundreds of articles about the family in local papers. And while we think they were obviously socially prominent, we wonder if there was also this sort of inside connection between them and the media because of the typewriter business. Because like all sorts of things that they worked on were reported. Here are a couple of their children, George and Frank, and then they had 2 daughters. Here they are, Winifred and Gertrude, and they all grew up in this house, and they all went to East High School, as Jovan mentioned. So that's kind of a really neat connection. One of the sons, Frank, died fairly young, and George and his wife then moved into the house, and it was his wife that stayed there and inherited the house after after John and his wife Frances died, and lived there through, I think, almost through World War II. So the original family really held on to the house for a long time. The Stahls, his early business partners were people like the Raymonds, who built the Castle Marne bed and breakfast, also by William Lang. So it's sort of interesting to track the interrelatedness among the people who were building homes in the area during this time. Let's see, what other fun tidbits did we find?
Annie?
Yes.
There is a picture, I don't remember exactly where it is, of the blood house
Yes.
that was on the court. That one, it's
Here
just
it is.
amazing. Yeah, imagine that.
Right, the houses that unfortunately we have lost, as you mentioned, there has already been change in the area. So this one would have been just down the street, also by William Lang. And that's sort of the interesting thing about Lang, is he built, from the really high style like this, or the Castle Marne, or the Molly Brown house is, probably one of the higher style. And then some of the just more, if any of you have been down to the 200 block of South Broadway Historic District, which are sort of what we call them the mini Langs. They're sort of these more modest, but still turreted and elaborate homes. And I think the Stahl house obviously is on the higher end of that scale in terms of the level of decor. But, here's one of the windows, reminds me very much of the stained glass we have at the Molly Brown house. And Lang typically did design his own stained glass.
Huh.
So you can, yeah, it's kind of an interesting. So you can see a lot of his flair coming across in all of these properties. And he was very prolific, considering that his career in Denver was relatively short, because after the silver crash, he unfortunately went bankrupt and moved away to Chicago and died there. So it's neat to see these properties still cropping up, and I think all representative of this very early era of Denver history. I think there's a few more pictures here. Yes, at the very end. So it gives you, a little more the scale of the chimneys. And yeah, the Fitzgeralds had done a great job, because all the windows, or nearly all the windows, are original and intact. It's this front window here, which I'll see if we have a better picture of, that is considered there we go, fine example of a Richardsonian window, because of the arch and the rusticated stone. But all the other elements are really pretty typical Queen Anne style.
It's beautiful. Would it be possible for you to send this document to us so that we can put it in our survey and this video that we're making?
Yeah, and I have to find the PDF version, and the city itself will also post it on their website. But I checked yesterday and it wasn't up yet, because our hearing dates aren't quite close enough yet, but they're coming now, getting closer. And we'd love, I know, it'd be great to be able to show the commission and city council the support of the neighborhood. So if you all as an RNO were willing to either write a letter or to come, all those meetings are online now, so you can come to the Landmark Commission from home, or later on to city council. I think, they always get really excited when there's an owner supported designation. And we think it's a great chance to make this connection to the work Discover Denver's doing, and that it's actually, starting to lead to some results for neighborhoods that are wanting to preserve more of their more of their heritage.
I have a couple questions. Annie, do you have to have a councilman support you on this as well? Like an overlay would?
No, so a designation can be brought by an owner. It can be brought by it can be brought by a council person, but it doesn't have to be. It can be brought by the head of community planning and development, or it can actually be brought by 3 non-property owners, 3 residents of Denver. You know, if you follow the news, those are the ones that get a little more controversial, but it can be done. So yeah, you don't have to. I know Jovan already did meet with Councilman Hines, you know, to let him know that this is coming up, and I'm hopeful and fairly confident that we will have his vote. I think he'll be enthusiastic about it, but it is considered quasi-judicial. So
I can add something to that. He said, this is actually owner nominated. And he seemed kind of excited about the whole idea. I think that since his term in office, the ones that he's most familiar with have been not owner nominated. So he seemed pretty supportive of it, because I was kind of quizzing him about, I hope you're a real advocate of historic preservation. And he didn't say yes or no, but he did seem to be supportive of this nomination. So that was good.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. The board is very excited. We'll have to see if we can get broader support, but it's such a great house. Annie, are there any other Lang houses in Congress that we should be looking at?
yes is the short answer. I think there are. This is certainly one of the most intact and most prominent, because I know that during the Discover Denver work, we did find a couple of others. I should have prepared, but I didn't prepare.
No, that's okay. I'll do that. I was gonna contact Beth.
Yeah, because Beth will know for sure.
But this is because Jovan, you're stepping up. This is totally great for the neighborhood as a whole as well, because it helps people a lot of people are aware of the Discover Denver survey, and then to see this house come up so shortly afterwards, I know it was on your radar before, is tremendous. Because we have a really wonderful neighborhood with some really beautiful homes. So I'm very happy about this.